from the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Sello Hatang is standing by to talk to us as we continue to reflect on the life and times of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. Sello, good afternoon to you and a very warm welcome. You know, as Michael was talking to us at the screen over there, I couldn't help but wonder, particularly when he raised the issue of solitary confinement for a year, and I think many people forget that. Do you think sometimes that the role of this person has been underplayed because of the giant stage that Nelson Mandela strode across?
That's so true, Jeremy, and I think the important thing about this is how we tend to forget some people in struggle. As we always fight for or even look for the big man in the story, we forget that he was kept alive, his memory was kept alive by those people who were struggling, who were tortured even. And Mama Winnie was tortured for a long time. And I think it's important that we never forget that she was part of that generation that was tortured. Madiba was never touched. He related a story of how when he got to prison, a prison warder aggressively tried to go and attack him. And he said, "You try and touch me, you'll lose everything you have." And that was the end of it. And I think we need not forget that.
It also brings me to a very important statement, I think, from the South African Communist Party today. And again, you can weigh in on this. It says it's deeply worried that the South African Revolution is losing its veterans who contributed immensely to the struggle against colonial oppression. It's a fact, though, that generation is starting to move on. I think that was also alluded to by Zweli Mkhize outside Mama Winnie's home a little bit earlier today. But I guess that's the inevitability of politics, and time needs to march on.
The only sad thing about that, or the most saddest thing about it, is we don't have a Winnie Mandela that's obviously rising. And it's about how legacies need to grow by finding others who then need to then pick it up and take it on. And I think for as long as we don't have that Winnie Mandela, who's the next Winnie Mandela, should be our next project. Who is our next Winnie Mandela? Who is this very resilient person who's facing all challenges today that they didn't face back then? Technology that comes through. And one of the things that saddens me also is that Mama Winnie didn't want vulnerability in our society. And I want to repeat the story that one of her last, in my view, her last acts of activism, when I called her after Palesa Madiba disappeared. Remember the
yes, I do.
Student? She was the first person I called after I visited the family, and I said, they're complaining that the police are not doing anything about this. For weeks, if not months, it bothered her. She wanted to find Palesa, and unfortunately she was found dead. And it's that I think we need to remember, that was a caring person who was that much down to earth that she cared about her community. She would travel long distances to go bury fellow comrades, to go and make sure that young people know about the story of struggle. And I think that's the history that we should also be unearthing.
I want to go back, if we can, to the statement that you've just made about finding the next generation, Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, the next person. But I'd come back at you and say that we have a pantheon of strong, opinionated, powerful, outspoken women who talk about a number of very powerful causes. Is the suggestion here that we're not going to find that person isn't available, or do you think that they're already starting to crystallize in some respect?
I think what I'm advocating for is for society to keep picking them up.
And it's not just a single person?
Them. No, it's to pick them up, to empower them. Because at the moment we have a society that if you make one mistake, and if one person knew about that, it's Mama Winnie, that a mistake can then bury you. And people forget about all the good that you might have done in your life. And that's what we should then be trying to do, Jeremy. With us losing her, we must then be saying, how do we use this moment to make sure that our children's children continue to reflect on her, and how will they remember her? They shouldn't be just remembering her for some of the things that we keep highlighting. Let's try and mourn with dignity. Let's try and support the family at this critical moment that they need our support.
Just a very quick answer, but I do need to sneak this in. Julius Malema speaking outside the House a little earlier today, and I quote saying that she was the president we did not have. Do you think that she might have, could have played a bigger role in formal politics in South Africa? She was a member of parliament. She did serve briefly as a deputy minister. Was there more that should have been done in that respect?
I think South Africa will look back and always regret that we didn't use her talent enough. And I think that's what Julius is referring to. And if anything, we should then be saying, how do we redress that? And redress in this case would mean that we need to deal with issues that she cared about. The issue of land, for example. Making sure that children aren't vulnerable to going missing, or young people even going missing. Unemployment, poverty and inequality. Those are things that we should then be saying, how do we ensure that the president we didn't have, we can at least try and have her by uplifting the lives of the vulnerable in our society.
Thank you very much for joining us. Sello Hatang, he is the Chief Executive Officer here in Johannesburg of the Nelson Mandela Foundation.